European governments were very interested in the proceedings going on in America with the drafting and ratification of the Constitution. The governments were interested because they had their agendas in their relationship with the United States. The general public, however, was not so concerned if we can judge that by what was in the newspapers. Most of the newspapers in Europe did not pay much attention to the political activity in America, and especially, surprisingly so maybe, to the debate over ratifying the Constitution. But each of the major countries in Europe had their own attitudes about the Constitution and what effect it would have on the new government of the United States. So if we look at Great Britain, its major concern was really twofold. One, it wanted to make sure that governments in America would not continue to hamper the collection of pre-war debts owed by Americans to British creditors. These are private individuals that have these debts in America, and they were being hampered from collecting those debts. And so in the Treaty of Peace, there was a provision saying that there would be no obstacles put in the way of British creditors to retrieve their pre-war debts. Well, that didn't work out. Many of the state legislatures did put obstacles in the way of British creditors to collect their debts. And so the hope would be on the part of the British government that the new strong central government would prohibit the states from making it difficult for British creditors to use American courts to regain the debts that were owed to them. Now, the British also wanted to reestablish the old commercial ties that they had, which was a very, very strong connection. The British felt that that would happen even without giving preferential treatment to American merchants. And so that's what the British did. They put major restrictions on American trade, and they expected, and they were correct, that the Americans would still continue to want to import European goods. And so that was the primary goal of the British. The Spanish wanted to increase trade with America, but and from a governmental point of view, they wanted to get repayment of the loans that the Spanish government made to the American government during the war. And the Spanish wanted to protect their colonies, in particular, maintain the borders between the land-hungry Americans and the Spanish colonies in Florida on the south and in the western Louisiana Territory, which was Spanish territory, and Mexico. And so the Spanish cut off the American navigation of the Mississippi River, thinking this might keep the Americans away. It didn't help the diplomatic relationships between the two countries. There was a disagreement between Spain and America over the southern boundary of the United States. The Treaty of Peace between the United States and Great Britain set the southern border of the United States too far south in the judgment of the Spanish. They wanted that southern border of the United States much further north. Spain would like to get that settled. Finally, the French had the most connection with the Americans, and they had their agenda, which was pretty widespread. First of all, they wanted to get repaid from the loans that they had made to the Americans. They gave a lot of money that was not in the form of loans, that were gifts. They didn't expect to get that money back, but they wanted the loans repaid to the French government. They also wanted the loans repaid to the Dutch bankers, private bankers, because those loans had been guaranteed by the French government. The French also wanted to increase trade with the Americans, and that was working pretty well, especially through the efforts of Lafayette. They wanted to restrict the trade between Great Britain and America so it wouldn't go back to pre-revolutionary volumes. And more than anything else, however, the French government wanted to make sure that there would not be an alliance or rapprochement between Great Britain and its former colonies. So that was the goal of the French, trying to maintain strong, friendly relations with the Americans, but keep America aloof from Great Britain.